UFC Fight Night Barboza vs Murphy has just taken place this weekend, and in this video I'll be giving you my recap of every single fight on the card and all the card's best moments. Kicking it off with the first fight of Vanessa Demopoulos versus Emily Ducote. Now, this was actually a pretty decent fight to kick off the card. They both had a lot of volume between them. There was almost 300 combined strikes. Now, when we look at the fight itself, Demopoulos did get in Ducote's face pretty much straight away and was the aggressor for pretty much most of the fight. She utilized that forward pressure very well, and she was actually mixing it up on the feet fairly well as well. I honestly thought that Ducote would just take over with the boxing, but I feel like Ducote was very much relying on her counter striking only, not really being the aggressor herself. And when it came to Demopoulos, she was ultimately, mixing it up very well. Especially in that first round, she was going head, body, legs. She was opening with those leg kicks. She had a lot of them going. And across the fight, she did have more visible damage. In the second round, she split both of Ducote's eyebrows open, and also early in the first, I believe she did bloody her nose as well. So it was a very close fight, and it was pretty much all on the second round, I think. I think Demopoulos did take the first round out of just the volume and bloodying up her nose, and then Ducote took the third round, definitely. She was just putting on a clinic at that point. But it definitely came down to that second round. I mean, Ducote did have nice counter shots, but I think Demopoulos did take it from the visuals overall. The visible damage that she put on her leading into that second round. I think the fact that she split both her eyebrows open, I honestly think that won her the fight. And ultimately, I think it was that forward pressure and her dictating the pace more than Ducote was. Yes, Ducote did outland her, but if you're looking at her controlling the octagon, Demopoulos controlling the octagon and causing more visible damage, then there's argument obviously there for her to win the fight, especially if she did take the first round, which I think she did. And honestly, I don't think that it's any form of robbery or anything like that. I've seen a few posters saying it, and I went with Emily Ducote, and honestly, if I was to pick one of them, I probably just would have picked Vanessa Demopoulos. But that being said, though, if the fight was going to go any further, Ducote would have taken it easily. If that was like a 5-round fight, I think Ducote probably would have finished her, to be honest. She was just piecing her up towards the end of the fight. But yeah, overall, very close fight and a good fight to kick off the start of the card. On to Alatengheili versus Kleidison Rodrigues. Now, I did go with Kleidison Rodrigues, but Alatengheili 100% deserved this fight. Kleidison Rodrigues was frustrating. I mean, especially on his back, he could not do anything. When Alatengheili had top control, which in that first round, as soon as Alatengheili reversed the position and got top control, there was nothing Kleidison Rodrigues could do. Like, ultimately, Alatengheili was just having a field day on the ground. And all I can really say from Kleidison Rodrigues, yes, he had the power there as we predicted. He had the more powerful shots and was chewing up Alatengheili's lead leg. But as I said in the predictions, if Alatengheili comes into this fight composed, he's going to get the win, and that's exactly what he did. Kleidison, yes, had the power advantage, but did not have the fight IQ whatsoever. He went 2 rounds down pretty much instantly after being controlled, honestly, the entire time. Alatengheili had over 8 minutes of control time throughout the fight, and just to top off the frustration, going into that third round, Kleidison Rodrigues is down 2 rounds. He needs to get a finish, and then what does he do? He goes to shoot for a takedown, gets instantly stuffed, and then he gets taken down off of that. He just had absolutely no answers, did not use very good fight IQ, and ultimately was definitely a deserved win for Alatengheili. Now, moving on, Piera Rodrigues versus Carnelossi, Ariane Carnelossi. Oh, God. Okay. So, obviously, we had the headbutt from Piera Rodrigues. Just so dumb. you are winning the fight in pretty much all avenues. You are outstriking. You have literally wobbled her about 3 times in one sequence, get her to the ground. If you literally posture up and go for the ground and pound, you will knock her out. And in that scenario, no, I'm just gonna fucking headbutt her. Sure. And the biggest issue as well with the headbutt is that just as she went for that headbutt, about 2-3 seconds before, she was warned by the ref about a headbutt. She had headbutted twice. So yes, I had Piera Rodrigues winning the fight. She was definitely the most skilled fighter between the two of them, and she was going to win. I mean, she found her range, was just piecing Carnelossi up in the exchanges, and Carnelossi just did not have a single answer for her. And honestly, it's just throwing the fight away. It was ridiculous. Like, I had Piera Rodrigues winning, but she ultimately 100% deserved the disqualification, without a doubt. I mean, the headbutt was completely intentional. She was warned before, and ultimately it's just one of the dumbest decisions to throw away a fight like that. And yeah, ultimately it does suck for Carnelossi, because she's going to get hate from it either way, because she did take that 5 minutes, and it's kind of like that Aljamain Sterling story in terms of, taking the knee and then putting on a show. Ariane Carnelossi didn't really put on a show, but I mean, it's still the fact that, she didn't fight on, she's weak, or this, that, the other. But ultimately, I don't blame her at all. I mean, if she's getting headbutted after getting pieced up, just take the win and move on. I mean, it's not your fault that your opponent has just fouled you. So, and a headbutt isn't nothing as well. The head went straight to her chin as well, and she was already so rocked. And as I said, if Piera Rodrigues just postured up, she would have just TKO'd her on the ground. Ariane Carnelossi would have had no answers. She was so hurt. There was just no chance. She honestly would have taken it so easily within the next 5-10 seconds, but no, she threw it away. So yeah, terrible, just opportunity lost for Piera Rodrigues, and yeah, just got to move on from it. Moving on to Magomedov versus Warlley Alves. Now, Alves was swinging so heavy from the start. I mean, he just gassed himself out. I mean, it's just kind of a lack of fight IQ in the start of this fight card, to be honest. And yeah, by the end of the first round, I mean, Warlley Alves was gassed, but not taking anything away from Magomedov's performance in the fact that Warlley Alves was gassed. The biggest thing we take away from this fight is Magomedov, which we haven't seen from him before, especially in the UFC, is that he was very, very composed. He drew out Alves' gas tank instantly, and he was fantastic on the ground in comparison. He made Warlley Alves carry his weight, and Magomedov was just one step ahead of him through the ground transitions. And yeah, ultimately he showed very good stamina improvements. I did think he would get Warlley Alves out of there, but honestly, I think it's good for Magomedov for just multiple reasons, in the sense of taking that to a decision, just to really state that, he has a consistent gas tank, or at least he's trying to show that he has a consistent gas tank throughout 15 minutes at least. I know it's not 25, but at least it's 15. And, like that. And it wasn't just like him, just pot shotting, just conserving energy. I mean, he was grappling for pretty much the whole entire fight. Like, he was moving around a lot, going through transitions, and obviously making sure that he can keep Warlley Alves down, which takes stamina as well. So, I mean, with over 11 minutes of control time, he literally basically controlled him the whole entire fight, and that takes a lot of stamina. So, yeah, very impressive from Magomedov, and it's good to see that we might have those stamina improvements there. Moving on to Melissa Gatto versus Tamires Vidal. Now, yeah, Gatto was very impressive in this fight. I think probably one of the most impressive performances so far on the card. Probably one of the most impressive performance overall in the whole entire card, to be honest. She had suffocating pressure through the whole first round. Very good transitions, and she was just
purely dominant. I mean, she just destroyed Tamires, Vidal. They weren't just not of the same caliber, to be honest. So it's going to be very interesting to see what Melissa Gatto does moving up, and it'll be fascinating to see how far her submission game does take her, because we know that that's the best of her game. But what we did see was, I don't think I've ever seen a boob punch TKO before, and yeah, we got one. So I mean, I think it was Dom Cruz that said that that's definitely something that we're probably going to be seeing more of. But I mean, who knows? I mean, it worked, so I mean, I guess we'll just wait and see. But yeah, overall, very good performance from Melissa Gatto. Moving on, Oumar Sy versus Tuco Tokkos. Now, this card is just so up and down. It was just so strange. I mean, you had no fight IQ moments. You had, well, this fight, embarrassing moments. I mean, you look at Tokkos, he was just calling out to Brendan Allen, but he fights at Killcliff, so he trains, his main training partner is Brendan Allen, so he has a good submission. Like, I mean, he was confident in his submission game and his submission defense. So he was yelling out, he was being a bit of a showboat, saying like, oh, he's breathing heavy, he's breathing heavy. He's probably said it like 5 or 6 times. And he was just, obviously, that's just showing that he's cocky in that. And he's yelling out to Brendan Allen. And then he goes and gets submitted. Just Oumar Sy just completely manhandled him throughout the whole entire first round, which obviously is the only round we got because Oumar just destroyed him. Now, I did think that in my predictions that we'd get to the end of the first round or the start of the second round, and we would see that Oumar would take over in terms of that stamina, because Tokkos throughout the regional scene has had a pretty shaky gas tank when it comes to the end of the first, the start of the second round, and I just thought Oumar would take over and TKO him from there. But I mean, this is just emphasizing Oumar Sy's well-roundedness. He had great wrist control and just positionally destroyed Tokkos on the ground. He had no answers, and yeah, it's just fantastic to see Oumar Sy round out his game even more. And I do think that he's going to be able to bring a bit more flavor to the actual light heavyweight division, especially with him, like in terms of his physical attributes and, you know, his well-roundedness as well. It's good to see. I think it'll be good to see in the light heavyweight division a bit more submission-orientated threats. But yeah, ultimately an amazing fight for Oumar Sy, and it's going to be good to see what he has going forward. Moving on to the feature prelim, Tom Nolan versus Victor Martinez. Now, Nolan dictated the pace pretty much straight away. But again, like I said in the predictions, when it comes to learning from his past fight against Nicholas Motta, he needed to make sure that he wasn't going to get over aggressive or stay in that dirty boxing range, or at least that pretty close, like Muay Thai to boxing range. Now, when it came to that is where we ran into a problem with Tom Nolan. He got over aggressive and got too close within the exchange, and he paid for it. He got clipped and he dropped straight to the ground. Now, with him dropping straight to the ground like that, he did a much better thing, which he stated in his post-fight speech, which was when he got dropped in this fight, he stayed in his guard and controlled himself, making sure that he didn't get into a position while he was already rocked to then get finished, exactly like what Nicholas Motta did to him. And so he was very composed in that, made sure he got back up to the point where he was actually recovered enough to do so. And then, obviously, when Martinez came in, landed a flush knee to the liver, and ultimately, I think it was a very exciting fight for what it was. Obviously, it ended in the first round within 4 minutes. And yeah, can't really take much away from Victor Martinez in the fight. Honestly, he didn't fight a bad fight at all, dropped him. But yeah, that knee to the liver just completely finished him. Moving up to the main card, Luana Pinheiro versus Angela Hill. Angela Hill was fantastic in this fight. Honestly, her being the age that she is, and the success that she was able to find, not only in the striking, but her takedown defense, especially when it came to those judo throws, those hip tosses, perfect. She was fantastic. Luana just did not have answers there to get her to the ground. And when it came to the feet, I mean, Hill just moving forward, stuffing everything. She was landing the better shots. And then when Angela Hill got it to the ground. She landed really nice ground and pound as well. She 100% took the first round, and something that's completely surprised me, which made me shut up in the predictions, is firstly, her feints were good, which she doesn't have bad feints, but her head movement was so far improved, even literally from her last fight. She was slipping shots from Luana. Now, Luana does have those very looping, heavy shots. They're not very technical, so that could be in part as to why she was able to evade them so well. But when it comes to Angela Hill in general in that fight, I just can't take anything away from her. She was fantastic. And yeah, ultimately just stuffing the takedowns was the best part of her game. And we just can't not mention the finish. I mean, in the 30 fights that she's now had, she secured her first ever submission win. And it was that mounted guillotine off of the takedown that Luana tried to shoot for. And fantastic in terms of statistically, Luana's never been submission. Luana has a BJJ base, and Angela Hill submits her. Angela Hill's first submission of her career isn't even against a striker. It's against a submission-based fighter, so that just makes it even better for Angela Hill. Ultimately, seriously, just a fantastic performance for her, especially at her age, and honestly, the best performance of the card and possibly her career. Now, moving on to Adrian Yanez versus Vinicius Salvador. Something I said in the predictions, biggest issue straight out of the gate was Vinicius Salvador's confidence and keeping his hands low. Well, not his confidence, his cockiness more so. And the fact that he was just keeping his hands low from that. I understand that he is more so an unorthodox fighter, rangier fighter, so he does like to keep his hands low to like kind of snap a jab, snap straight strikes, tries to make sure that his strikes aren't telegraphed. But when you are fighting someone like Adrian Yanez, who is finding so much success at pressuring him against the cage and cutting him off, honestly, it was just the wrong fight style to have at that point in time. Adrian Yanez was in control of that fight from the first second, and Vinicius Salvador was just using way too many unorthodox techniques. And you could see from literally probably like 30 seconds into the fight, Yanez was already getting his reads. You could tell he was just looking for that counter shot. I thought he was really timing a counter hook, but when it came to the way Vinicius was swinging his shots, the fact that Yanez pretty much like altered his game and went for that overhand, the overhand landed so flush, and it was probably the best strike he could have looked for, to be honest. And yeah, ultimately it was just an amazing win for Yanez, especially now to get his momentum back. And it looked like he was kind of battling some demons through it, I think, especially through those last two losses. He looked extremely frustrated after that Jonathan Martinez fight, which is understandable. Obviously, he got to a point where if he beat Rob Font, he was getting up to that top 5 position, and now literally 2 fights later, he's outside of the top 15. So that being said, with the top 15, this is an amazing performance to hopefully get him that top 15 fight. Moving up to Temba Gorimbo versus Ramiz Brahimaj. Now, Gorimbo, just sharper, honestly. I think that's the word to use. He was just sharper overall, and it's hard because when you look at Ramiz, he's obviously had that 2 years off. He had the spinal surgery as well, but Temba just stronger, sharper, especially in the clinch positions. I mean, he had over 10 minutes of control time, which was mainly against the cage. And he showed great takedown defense himself, which was stuffing Ramiz's game plan in terms of trying to look for that submission. And without Ramiz getting that positional advantage to get that submission game going off, he was a sitting duck, to be honest. I mean, Gorimbo did a great job of breaking Ramiz's gas tank down as well. You could tell that he was slowing down heavily more towards the third round. Well, second and third round, actually. And yeah, it was a good win for Temba Gorimbo, but I will say that going on with the weirdness of this card, it was a bit of an off post-fight speech. Gorimbo was basically saying that death is coming to the people in the comments, that are saying that he is just too emotional. So, I mean, it was I don't know, it was a bit of an off-putting post-fight speech. I will say that everything was good in that fight up until he started getting on the mic, to be honest. But that being said, though, I mean, a good win for him overall. And it'd be good to see what he has next. I think it might be good to actually match him up with someone that's like Ramiz, but is much more of a veteran, has a good submission game as well, because I think he does need to get tested there, and someone that has a pretty lengthy striking style. So I would actually like him to see, which I'll mention more of in the matchups to make video that'll be coming up. I think it would be good to see him fight someone like Gunnar Nelson. I think that would be a fantastic matchup, both fairly similar stylistically, at least in the ground game, but it'd be interesting to see how he deals with a karate style base like Gunnar Nelson. Now moving on to Khaos Williams versus Carlston Harris. Man, Khaos Williams just honestly has so much power. That guy is seriously just a freight train. He was doing a fantastic job. He was setting up his power shot with the jab to the body, literally pretty much from the first 5 seconds. He was really just trying to look for that power shot, which if you have that much power, why not? I mean, Khaos, when you look at the exchange with Khaos and Carlston in the actual finishing sequence, Khaos got tagged first. He got I believe it was a hook or an overhand that Carlston threw, and it hit him straight on the back of the head. But then Khaos just followed straight, and it wasn't like a weak shot either. And Khaos just followed straight through with the right hook, and as soon as that right hook hit, it was just done. Like, you could just see that power differential there. And Carlston Harris isn't like a weak fighter in terms of his striking capabilities and his actual power, but Khaos Williams just shows that difference in level of power, and he is going to be moving up the division fast. I don't think anyone in the welterweight division is going to want to sit and trade with him, honestly. A great performance by Khaos Williams. Moving on to the main event, Barboza versus Murphy. Now, this one, as I said, was a very difficult fight to call, and I did originally have Lerone Murphy winning, and then I switched to Barboza. Now, my switch to Barboza was based heavily and relying heavily on the fact that Barboza would be able to maintain his gas tank and pick the fight up from the third round onwards to then see if Murphy's stamina would be tested. And Murphy's stamina was fantastic. He did not wane at all. He just looked incredible. He looked like he is definitely ready for a top 10 fight. He looked very good with his feints early, which was it was just disrupting Edson Barboza's striking rhythm, and that was the name of the game here. Lerone Murphy, pretty much for 25 whole minutes, was disrupting Edson Barboza's striking game. Edson Barboza was barely on the front foot, so he's not going to be able to drive through and get many of those shots off without taking strikes to actually get his off. And when you're looking at how fast Lerone Murphy's 1-2s were, it just wasn't a good idea to try and honestly just get into a dirty exchange for Barboza, because I honestly think he would have got knocked out. Now, Barboza's chin was his durability was fantastic. I mean, for 38 years old, you have to honestly, if you're giving him something from this fight, it's his damn chin. Like, he took a lot of shots. Lerone Murphy almost landed 300 strikes, and he did not knock Barboza down. He wobbled him a couple times, did not knock him down. And Lerone Murphy had that forward pressure. He was the one that was getting those power shots off. And it was, honestly, it was just a fantastic performance from Lerone. Edson was getting some powerful shots off here and there, definitely through the first round, but it was just Lerone's disruptive boxing. It was just so sharp, and he was just honestly picking Edson Barboza apart, and that's a huge tell for where his striking is at in that division. He's definitely up there. Honestly, he could be top 5, top 7, top 8 in terms of that striking in that division. He looked very, very crisp with his kickboxing. And Lerone, he came back as well. I mean, he got hurt so badly at the end of that first round with that up kick. I honestly think he partially got slapped. The way he dropped, and he did go a bit, like the way his arms were positioned, he just looked like he was completely stiff for about 2 seconds. And then as soon as he landed on Barboza, it kind of looked like he woke up. But the fact that he was able to readjust, I mean, he looked like shit in the corner going from the first to the second round. He looked so dazed, but going into that second round and onwards, he just took over the fight completely, and he made Barboza bite on the feints, and that's when he got his counter striking in, which I said in the predictions, he has fantastic counter striking. And yeah, ultimately, Lerone, fantastic performance. If I was to give Edson anything, it's definitely his durability, his chin. He was doing a good job of chewing up Lerone Murphy's front leg, which I think Edson Barboza was going in with the plan of, okay, if I chop down his lead leg, that's going to disrupt his jab, and that's going to force him to switch stance, which he might not look good in a switch stance, because we haven't really seen much of him in another stance. And, well, in the opposite stance. And just with that, Lerone was switched. He did have to switch stance because of that leg kick damage, for sure. I believe he switched it around the third round, but it didn't matter. Now we know that Lerone is comfortably a switch stance fighter on his feet. Honestly, it just did not look like it disrupted him at all. His jab was fantastic in both stances, and his power shots were too. So ultimately, yeah, we know that Lerone Murphy's a switch stance fighter now, ultimately, and that just makes him even more dangerous and increases the credibility of his striking overall. And I honestly think now for Lerone, it is time for a top 10 opponent, and I think that Calvin Kattar would just be absolutely an amazing matchup for him and the fans. Moving on to our Fight Card Awards, kicking it off with the fighter to watch. Got to give it to Oumar Sy. Honestly, with those physical characteristics that he has, the momentum as well, he's just so well-rounded. And as I said before, I think that he's just going to give a lot of life and a lot of different challenges to that light heavyweight division, especially with that submission department. And honestly, yeah, I think he just had a fantastic performance overall, and it's only going to be up for him from here. And it'll be good to see him fight on the French card coming up later in the year. Now, moving on to finish of the night, I would give it to Adrian Yanez, but I think that Carlston Harris did pose a bigger threat for Khaos Williams than Vinicius Salvador did for Adrian Yanez. So I do have to give Khaos Williams this one. As I said, he got tagged the back of the head in the start of the exchange, and then just came back and just took him out. He is just so dangerous in terms of that stand-up game, and I think he is going to do a lot of damage in the welterweight division for sure. Moving on to the third best moment of the fight card. I have to give it to, as much as I hate it, just got to give it to that headbutt disqualification. Just so ridiculously dumb. She was just dominating the fight, had her in such a good position in top control, and then you just deliberately just give yourself the loss. And after you've already been warned as well, and just ultimately, hopefully, it is a learning curve for Rodrigues, because, I mean, she has the skill set there. She's very good at striking, very composed, great counter striking, honestly accurate as well. And she got the fight to the ground and had it exactly where she wanted it. But no, she just has to go and try and headbutt her chin through the bloody canvas. So yeah, ultimately, yeah, it was definitely a moment on the card, but yeah, definitely not a positive one. Now, moving on to second place, I'm gonna give it to the Khaos Williams finish, to be honest. He's definitely a problem moving up in that division. Fantastic durability, and his power is obviously there. And yeah, no welterweight's going to be wanting to exchange with him in the pocket. So if he wants to make it dirty, he's going to have that advantage there. And if he fills out his ground game as well, he will definitely be looking like a top 15, even possibly a top 10 threat, I think. And moving on to first place on the fight card, the best fight card moment, honestly, I gotta give it to Angela Hill. Her performance at her age, being 39 years old, versing someone like Luana Pinheiro, who's in their prime age, just honestly a flawless performance. She got a submission win, her first submission win against a submission-based artist, a BJJ-based fighter, and she just looked fantastic everywhere. She looked fantastic, especially in stuffing the takedowns, the hip tosses. You know, Luana just didn't have any answers for her. She had fantastic feints. Her head movement was even good, which I said was terrible. You know, she shut me up there for sure, and ultimately she looked fantastic in this fight. And it's honestly pretty insane that she is just moving into the top 10 for the first time in her career after 30 fights. It is, yeah, definitely fantastic to see that at 39 years old, she's the best that she's ever looked. And at her age, and with the performance, obviously, she 100% rightfully deserves that 50K bonus she got. If you enjoyed this recap video and you want to see more MMA-based content, please like, comment, share, and subscribe, and I will catch you in the next one.